everyone. Welcome to the Practical Marketing and Management Tips for Small Law Firms virtual conference. I'm Cara Pryor, president at James Publishing, co-founder of James Marketing Amplifier. I'm here to officially welcome you. We're thrilled to have you. Buckle up, get ready for 13 information-packed sessions over the next couple days. But now I'm going to introduce you to our very first speaker, Maddy Martin. We're getting down to business. We're not wasting any time. Maddy is the head of growth and education for Smith.ai, which provides law firm communication services, including their virtual receptionist and intake service, web chat, and keypad cloud phone system. Maddy has spent much of the last decade growing tech startups from New York to California and has expertise in all facets of digital marketing. Maddy is a sought-after speaker on law firm marketing and management. We're very excited to have her here with us. Today, she'll be presenting on a topic that far too many of the attorneys I speak with really struggle with: leaky lead funnels, how to accelerate growth with affordable and scalable tech, tools, and talent. Let's hear it, Maddy. Take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the presentation. We are going to be talking about leaky lead funnels. I'm Maddy Martin, and I'm going to be using the material today mainly from the law firm communication playbook that I developed. And that's provided as resources for you as part of the James Publishing program here. And just focus on this topic, I'm going to be going through some of the slides in that playbook so that you know exactly where to reference for more information. Feel free to get in touch with me to dive into any of the subjects during today's session further. So as I mentioned, I'm Maddy Martin. I'm the head of growth and education for Smith.ai, a virtual receptionist, web chat, text, and Facebook message answering company. The vast majority of Smith.ai's clients are solo and small firm attorneys, many other solo professionals in professional services businesses mainly. So if we're not serving an attorney, it's IT, finance, real estate, you name it. Now, for today's topic, we're going to be talking about leaky lead funnels and how to fix them. So what we want to focus on is accelerating growth through more qualified leads, faster responses, and affordable tools that help get you there without focusing all of your time and attention on this when you have lawyering to do. So we're going to be talking about what clients want, how this informs your intake process, that marketing funnel, and I'll go into what the funnel really means. And then understanding the best lead qualification techniques, questions, standardizing them, and then looking at the entire workflow using tech tools and talent. So you can use these for directly, improving the lead funnel, but also take into consideration how this informs your policies, how it's adding sort of information that benefits the value of your firm. Do you have a repeatable playbook for growth? Well, that makes your firm more valuable if you're ever going to have a merger or acquisition. It may also inform succession plans, not just for the owner, but also employees. How are new staff onboarded? If you're bringing in an intake specialist, are they getting sort of trained on this workflow for bringing in leads effectively to convert new clients who have reasonable expectations about what it's going to be like to work for the firm, work with the firm. So keep in mind that, yes, we're talking specifically about the lead funnel today, but these do have value outside of this specific topic in building up a business that has intrinsic value through the processes that are repeatable over time that you can use to drive growth. So, really want to talk about clients for a second and what they expect. It's no surprise that right now they expect an immediate response. They are across the board, Amazon, Instacart, Uber, having services at their fingertips. CVS texts you when your prescription is ready. Instacart allows for grocery delivery, within the same day. Amazon is doing next day delivery. Uber allows you to get a car with the touch of a button within a few minutes. So the issue is that for law firms, no matter large or small, you're also under those same pressures and consumer demands for an immediate response. And what we see is that directly affects growth. So 67% of law firm clients say their decision to hire is most influenced by the responsiveness to the first call, email, or text from the firm. So it's really important that we see that the biggest leak to fix across everything we're going to be talking about is making sure you never miss a call or other communication. Now, the other thing we're going to be talking about heavily is screening. So if 64% of legal consumers are looking for an attorney who offers a free consult, and then 59% who actually have a consult don't convert into a paying client, well, what does that mean? It means that there could be better screening at the upfront beginning of the process through a really good intake form, good website form to gather the initial contact information, and even during that initial phone call with the receptionist or chat with someone on your website. So let's take a look at the Clio report from the last few years and see, who's laboring and who's lawyering. Now, we talked a little bit about the immediate responsiveness required by new leads, but also there's a competitive advantage here. It's not just about your lead funnel, it's also about the available pool of leads within your market, within your practice area, and who you're going after. Because if you show up on Google search with a number of other law firms, how do you compete? How do you sort of skip rank if you don't rank first? Well, you can capture more leads by being the most responsive law firm, by extending your hours with receptionist services. So we'll talk through that as a competitive advantage. Now, one of the other things that we know is that clients are feeling urgent sort of needs to get at least in touch with an attorney and feel like they have someone who's going to help them resolve the issue. Lawyers on the whole from the Clio report really reported that they didn't sense that same urgency, and that may be a mismatch for that responsiveness that's delivered to clients. Clients are feeling urgency and lawyers are not. So how does that result in, lawyers on the whole not responding fast enough to the clients who say, I really need resolution with this. I really need someone to help me start working on this. And the sense of relief that they feel is then also not really matched to what lawyers see as the experience of the client. So think about, where the client's mind is, at the beginning and the end of the work together, and how does that inform your communications with them and the speed of those communications. Now, we totally recognize that lawyers and their small teams are overworked. You didn't get business training in law school. It didn't prepare you for the business side of running a law firm or the marketing side. And as a result, there's a huge lack of confidence and a gap in the business skills that are required. So we'll talk about the marketing funnel in a second, and we'll see that that is the core business skill to understand the return on your investment for bringing leads in and converting those who are well qualified into clients. This slide simply shows that there is, again, a huge loss in the time spent on admin work versus the time that could be applied if you delegate and automate tasks to revenue building work. And what we also see is that in these responses, and I'll talk about this in the solutions to the leaky lead funnel, is that not only is a timely response important, but also 74% of potential clients are saying they want to know more. They want to know what to expect in terms of the cost, duration, the process. How are you giving them enough information? And not you as in you personally, but you as in your team, as in who you've outsourced to or delegated work to your staff to cover. And 61% of potential clients are saying they didn't get enough information, and specifically cited that lack of information as the reason for not hiring the firm. And that means that first conversation doesn't have to be just friendly. It has to function as a means of giving the basic information that that lead needs to take the next step with your firm. So let's talk about the funnel. Funnel just means the sort of all pool of available audience that you're touching and bringing in. Maybe it's to your website, it's exposure to your brand, and then we're qualifying them. So we're asking questions, they're completing a form that requires them to divulge information, not just their contact information, but maybe also a little bit that indicates, are they a good fit for your practice area? And then, did they participate in chat? Did they sign up for a newsletter? Did they take some sort of action? Did they actually make a call? And they were, having a short conversation with you. Did they complete an intake form for more full assessment of whether or not they're a fit for services? And then, once they're vetted, there's a consult scheduled, there's a conflict check, there's an agreement, and hopefully at the end, a retained client of those clients you really want to work with. So this is not the scope of the discussion here, but in the playbook, there is an exercise for determining the cost of acquisition and return on your investment. So the most important thing about a leaky lead funnel is that you want to make sure you're capturing the volume of leads, and also that your conversion rate and your cost of acquisition are reasonable enough and profitable enough for you on the client side so that you can repeat this process. If it costs you more money than than your revenue, then obviously that client, you need to find other ways of getting clients, because you can't have a negative sort of profit statement. So as a result, you can use this form for, sort of plugging in your numbers. How many visitors convert to how many leads, convert to how many retained clients, what is the case value, and then what's the multiplication on that, right? So if you're retaining 10 clients and the case value is 500 each, then you have $5,000 that you've brought in. Well, what did it cost you to bring in those clients? If it's just 2, great. If it's 10, you've got a problem. So the most important thing to reducing, I'll get to this slide in a second, the most important thing to reducing and making your revenue greater than your cost to acquire these clients is to make sure that you're getting as many qualified opportunities out of that top of funnel pool. So one of the ways to also affect revenue and net gain is to not spend your time, which can be earned in a much more significant way by working on cases and billing hours, whether you're flat fee or hourly, and handing off these tasks that actually are direct cost to you to cheaper services and staff and automations, because the opportunity cost of you spending time on this is far greater than the cost of those individuals. And we see that obviously time is consumed in a number of ways that are outside of casework. So that results in about 2 hours a day of lost interruptions, of business development work that is valuable but not casework. How do you take the 2.9 hours spent on admin tasks and invest your strategic time only on your law firm and hand off all these routine communications, hand off all of the sort of admin work, so that you have a team that is working for you and you can focus on being available for those qualified leads to convert them to clients. So I'm going to skip over this section of the playbook for a second. We talked about the importance of communication, responsiveness. We will briefly touch on, sort of responding to the leads within your funnel and doing the qualification. It doesn't have to be you. So across everything we're talking about today, it's really important that you keep in mind the Eisenhower decision matrix. Are you going to do it right now? Is it important and urgent? Do you have a deadline? Is it important and not urgent? Are you deciding or scheduling time for it later? Is it urgent but not important and you can delegate it? It doesn't require a lawyer to do it. Not urgent, not important. Can you eliminate it, right? Can you defer it for later? So think about some of the tasks here and go back to this worksheet when we've identified some of the things that influence and reduce sort of leaks in the lead funnel. So leads come in a number of ways. And, obviously the most, the leads that we love the most are the leads that are referred by a friend or a partner or a community member. These are the people who send you really good leads. Maybe it's free, and you are seeing, sort of variable traction with this, right? Variable volume, because you don't really know when referrals are going to come through. So what happens? You start advertising, you build your website, you invest in organic search, and you start to get leads who are maybe not as well qualified. And what ends up happening is that the sort of process that you thought was great, because you're just getting the phone to ring from referrals and they know you and they love you and they're ready to sign up and their friend just propped you up. Now we have email marketing, content marketing, lead magnets. We have people who are finding you on search who just search for lawyer San Jose. Well, that's great that you ranked for that, but who knows if they're a fit for your practice area. So let's talk about qualification and intake. And really the funnel, which can be very complex, and this is in the playbook, and this is really the workflow of once we're qualifying leads and getting them through. What I want to talk about is the intake form and capturing the right information, right? So when it comes to leaky lead funnels, the first principle is to identify the leak, which we just talked about with the funnel. Identify, is it a matter of response rate? Is it a matter that you're getting way too many leads that you can't possibly handle and you don't know if they're qualified? Make sure that you see what it is and how to align it with your goals. So it's really important that if you say, my goal is to work with higher value clients, but fewer of them, that your lead funnel and your intake form that we're going to talk about reflect that you are more strict. Maybe you charge for consultations and you take action that leads to the fulfillment and achievement of your goals. If you're newer, then you're going to be or sort of growing your firm, you've added an attorney, you're sort of hungry for more and more leads, you've expanded your practice area, well, then maybe you're going to be less strict, screen less heavily, ask fewer questions up front because you want that volume. You may not charge for consultations, for example. So these are factors to consider. Now, what we really want to do is to make sure that the quality leads are not only coming through, but they're able to feel like they're in the right place if they are, and to get in touch with you and to have a really informed first conversation. So effective screening means not just asking for the contact details that we see here, but also relevant details that indicate urgency, for example, like, is there a court date scheduled? And if so, when is it? If you're in family law, what's the marital status? Is our children involved? Have you worked with other attorneys before? There are sort of qualifying factors that may not immediately be intuitive as required for the intake process, but you may find that if you ask the question, have you worked with any other attorneys? And the answer is sometimes 2 or 3, then that's a huge red flag for many attorneys that maybe you don't want to take that case. And it's a flag for the person on the phone to maybe not schedule that first appointment. So think about the different factors and also consider the sort of common qualities that your best clients have. And if you haven't done an audit or an exit interview, I highly recommend that you do so before you kind of identify what goes into this initial screening form. You may find that those clients that come from a certain referral partner or a certain sort of content piece or YouTube are more or less qualified. You may have a referral partner who doesn't seem to get it and they keep sending you leads in the wrong practice area. Reach out and sort of identify to them what it is that you do want and that you do. But think also, all right, the leads that are coming from this channel are the ones who I really most love to work with, the ones who find me through some online listing site or marketplace, like, they have unreasonable expectations for whatever reason. That's really important to make sure that you're doing exit interviews after every single client engagement and saying, was that person happy? Was I happy working with them? And how does that inform the intake form? And a great example of that is timing. So if you had a sort of stressful experience because you were taking clients who have a court date in a very short amount of time, maybe a few days, and you're able to, as a criminal defense firm, go in and help them, but it creates a lot of stress. The expectations are unreasonable because you said yes to something that's hard to achieve. Then maybe if all of those exit interviews or many of them are indicating that, the experience was not so great on both sides, well, then think, all right, if I'm asking for a court date, how far out do I want that court date to be in order to do the best work for that lead who's coming in, who I'm going to try my hardest to win? And that really gets at the heart of it here. So if you are using this form effectively, then it should be a screening tool. And only those who give the right answers beyond just contact information, the qualifying questions, the right answers to those qualifying questions, those should really determine if you are going to move forward, and the workflow and next steps for that person who is on the phone or on the chat, right? So create your form and have it ask the questions that help you determine what the next step is. So let's go back for a second to sort of this flow. And I was talking about, intake, and here's the process. we've got, a website visitor who then chats, they explain their needs, contact information is logged, and then a consult is scheduled. Maybe there's a bit of nurturing if they don't schedule a consult right away, and that lead goes through the funnel. Now, there are a couple of things here that we want to be thoughtful about, and the sort of second tenet of patching a leaky lead funnel is plugging the holes. So this all works all well and good if you have, the right size sieve, basically, right? And if you haven't sort of identified the size of the holes and whether or not you want to make them narrower, it's really important that you do so. So if you're saying, I only want these really big clients who have the ability to pay me for estate planning of a certain value, which means they must have a certain net wealth or assets under management or whatever it is, then as a result, you're going to say, well, I need to make sure that my sort of sieve holes are, bigger to the extent that all the little guys are dropping through and I'm only capturing those big potential clients. Because if you have, a very, very small hole, then the ones that are only medium size are still going to be in the funnel, and you're going to say, well, I don't work with that size client. They're not big enough for my estate planning practice. They don't meet my threshold. So think about that size of the sieve. It's really important. And let those, by the way, who go through the sieve, don't let them completely wash away. It's really important that you also refer clients to firms you recommend if they don't meet your criteria. So have a capture for those smaller leads. Don't let them completely go away. Capture the email and make sure that you say, here is our page of firms we recommend. If you do not fit our criteria, and you can be upfront on your website about that criteria, what your firm does and doesn't do, and the firms that you recommend who sort of complement or extend or go beyond the services that are yours. So that is one recommendation. Now, going beyond sort of that sieve, the other really important thing is talking about responsiveness and never sort of missing a lead, which is plugging this hole, but also making sure that, you are evoking the level of, experience and intellect and quality of your firm. What we often see is that during these initial conversations, whether it's intake or a new call and someone saying, I want more information, the worst thing is to try and just drive a script home every single time, because we all know when they're in touch with the attorney or paralegal, they don't have a script. Your experience is far better than that. So, one little moment to just take away here and take a moment to say, if you are, understanding these processes to mean I need more scripts for things, I need to write out, an answer for everything, and you must read it that way every time, I would sort of say take a step back and help the people who are helping you help you achieve your goals and identify things in a way that sort of taps into their natural communication and language abilities. It's much more natural for the lead. And when you're using these processes, yes, they can be systematized, but make sure that the conversations happening each time are natural and feel like they give personalized attention to that lead, which is really important for them to stay in the funnel and keep converting through the process. So the most important thing is when you're using services like virtual receptionists or even a basic VoIP phone system, there are some really important principles that we see not done very often and missed as sort of like simple steps. The first thing is with any funnel, you want to plug the leaks and you also want to prevent overflow, right? Like if your funnel gets all clogged up, then it's going to flow over the top and you're missing leads, not because like they're falling through the cracks, but because they're actually overflow getting lost. So a couple things that are really important here. The first is never miss a call. So if you have staff in-house, make sure that you have overflow call handling when someone's on the phone, when there's a sick day, when it's after hours, when it's weekends, whatever the case may be. If you answer your own phone and you're in court in the mornings and your team is not in, or you only have one person, you need to have overflow in place. The other really important thing is that you don't just have a basic answering service, or you don't just have overflow to voicemail or to a message taking service, that no matter who answers your phone, again, you're capturing that information. You're trying to provide the information and then gather information to qualify that lead and make sure that they take the next step. One really critical thing, by the way, with phone systems is that if you are creating latency or delays in your phone calls, then you may be losing leads who don't even end up connecting with someone because they've heard too many rings. So one thing I recommend that you do that is a dead easy fix for a leaky lead funnel is to make sure that your phone is answered promptly every time. So call and audit your phone system right after this. It's really important that you call your main number, not from obviously the main number, and count how many rings it takes to get to someone. And then also make sure that if you have direct extensions, you're counting those rings. And then be on the other line and have someone do that same test and see how long they wait for that number of rings. Let's say it's 5 before you hear 1. And guess what? That happens. It's really important that you don't see 5, 6, 7 rings, which our clients do see, before you pick up on that first ring. They may have heard many more rings than you heard, and as a result, you could get hang-ups before you even have the attempt to answer as promptly as you're going to say, well, Maddy taught me. If you hear the first ring, great. That should also be the first ring for the lead. Okay, super important. So audit your phone systems, make sure that it's up to date. And voicemail should only be the last, very last catastrophic backup, right? It should not be part of your process. It's not a screening tool, and any good phone system will also block spam and sales calls for free. So you're not going to say, well, I have my staff answering, but half the time it's, spam calls. We use voicemail to screen. That is putting a Band-Aid on a process that could be improved by the right system rather than having that be systematized. So the other thing that's really important in terms of plugging the hole is to make sure that you're addressing the omni-channel sort of nature of communications these days. So I will talk about the scheduling matter in a second, but it's very important that you think about what are the impacts of chat and messaging and Facebook Messenger and all the other ways that people get in touch with you. We know that in immigration firms, sometimes it's WhatsApp, and as a result, all these messages are coming through. Why? Because they're quiet, they're discreet, they're right there at your fingertips. We know from the Nielsen data recently that 30% increase in screen time is happening across the board, maybe due to COVID. And as a result, what do we see? We see that people who are busy or working 9 to 5 and then also doing childcare or taking care of elderly parents, they may not have time to call during business hours, and they may not call because it's outside of business owners and they don't expect a phone call to be answered. Why? Because 39% of those calls are not being answered at all by law firms specifically. So as a result, chat, text, Facebook, WhatsApp, you name it. Those need to be channels that are at your disposal. There's one issue here where you have a hole you didn't even know about because your VoIP phone system allows text messages and you've never checked them. So if that's the case, please go make sure that your texts are being answered and that you know what that number is and you know how to answer them. But the next thing is making sure that you have chat on your website. Normally, people have trouble finding things on websites. There's not website search. You can capture all the information, the name and email and phone number before a chat even begins. So it's not a noise generator. It's someone who says, yes, I'm going to give my information because I know I need a lawyer. And the chat has an added benefit of being complete in context, sort of SEO rich keywords that give you the language in the written form from the lead. And what we see is that that is a capture point for net new leads. So we see one chat for about every 4 phone calls, and that's a net new lead who wouldn't have called, right? So 20 to 30% increase in lead conversion. We're seeing that chat questions help prevent phone calls. So if you have a receptionist service where time is being spent on the phone, then the benefit here is also that you're not sort of adding to the phone calls, you're helping to reduce the phone call volume by handling chats on the website, handling text, handling Facebook messages, and maybe even putting them directly into a consultation. So no phone call is even needed. And consumers are saying yes across the board. They prefer live chat over email, over phone. But the really amazing thing is that consumers are using it with law firms even more because law firms are handling discrete matters. It may be a sensitive subject. It may be something that they can't have overheard as a phone call, especially if they're working from home now. So just consider these as opportunities to plug more holes, as an omni-channel sort of responsiveness that you have as a responsibility, not just to answer calls, but to answer every form of communication that's coming through to you. Open yourself up to those channels. And if you have an intake form and process really dialed in for screening, then you have a peace of mind that everyone who comes through is going to be effectively qualified. Now, going back to, for a moment, sort of scheduling and calendar availability, it's really important that one of the tools that you use is an online calendaring system so that you have that person who is staffing the call actually taking the next step after they've completed that intake to maybe warm transfer it, and if not, to schedule a callback. One of the worst mistakes that we see is that answering services, chat, whoever is on the front line for your communications is just taking a message. What did we see on this slide back here? That it takes 6 attempts to get people to convert. Well, it's going to be even longer if you have to play phone tag as part of that. You're making call attempts after the first one, and then you're sort of nurturing that lead. If you've never even had that first conversation, then they don't even know why you're calling them, right? So 50% of inbound calls are answered, which means that if you don't transfer the call while the lead is on the phone and you're just planning to play phone tag when you get that message and you try and call them back, your chances are dramatically reduced in getting that lead. And not to mention the fact that in the meantime, they've contacted the next firm on search that they found, the next referral that they received, and they've probably gone with the firm that was most responsive, because we know 2 out of 3 potential clients do. It's just a matter of the nature of things right now. So as a result, what we recommend is that if someone is not immediately available for sort of taking that call in the moment, that you schedule a callback using one of these online calendaring systems. Calendly, Acuity, Schedule Once, they all are available to you for free or very low cost. And that means that you can have that person on the phone schedule an appointment, and even optionally take payment if you charge for consultations. Ask those questions that obviously are important for screening, and then you can do so based on your availability without having to communicate that on a daily basis. It's baked in because these online calendaring tools directly connect to your calendar, and you can have buffer times between appointments. You can set up all the parameters that you need. You could even have a maximum threshold of 3 appointments in a day. You can hit quotas. You can have round robin scheduling. So if you have a larger intake team with maybe 2 or 3 or 4 team members, that it rotates equally between them, so they all have a sort of equal shot of getting booked for those. Otherwise, it's for the attorney, or it's for the attorney who's only within a certain practice area. So if part of your screening process is the estate planning leads go to Jane and the family law leads go to Joe, then the scheduling accommodates that. And even if one is required, for paid consultations, then that can happen within that workflow and not the other one if the other doesn't charge for consultation. So it can be as complex as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be, but at a baseline, make sure that you're offering the ability to schedule callbacks if a transfer is not immediately available and it is a lead. It may not be someone who needs a call back, as phone calls can come through from courts and other sort of community members. It can be from clients or opposing counsel. You can handle each of those differently, but for leads specifically to sort of close up and tidy up that leaky lead funnel, it's really important that you don't delay by waiting until you have the chance for a call back and taking your chances that they're going to call, that they're going to answer that call. So thinking about, the last and final piece, it's really catching that overflow. 25% of people were calling law firms after hours before COVID hit. It's even more extreme now. So make sure that during business hours, you have a process in place for effectively screening and scheduling and capturing those leads, and that you empower your after hours team to do as much of that as possible. One of the things that we see really often is things like calendaring are not done after hours because only the in-house team is sort of authorized to do that level of sort of work on a phone call. And we really recommend extending more responsibility to anyone at any time who is handling those leads. So our time is up for today, and I got through as much as I possibly could around, sort of fixing and patching the leaky lead funnel. I will say that the playbook has a lot more information, and we also have a communication library that I want to share with you that is a downloadable asset as part of this program, and it will allow you to start with templates, scripts to sort of guide the conversation flow, but not just completely dictate it, as I mentioned, emails, text message templates, and things like that to plug into all of those channels that I recommended today. So thank you so much for your time and joining me for this session. I hope that I have plugged and helped you plug as many leaks of your lead funnel as possible, and I look forward to your questions.